As I talked about last week, it's not like there's one pyruvate molecule there and it has to go left or right at the fork in the road. Or if we think of it as a fork in the road, it's not one car, it's not one hiker, it's not one bicyclist who has to go left or right. There are hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of pyruvate molecules, and a percentage of them can take the anaerobic pathway, a percentage of them can take the aerobic pathway. As long as oxygen is available, we prefer to take the aerobic pathway. But when we're using oxygen faster than we can consume it, we have to shift to the anaerobic pathway for some of the pyruvate. And the example I gave on Wednesday was, imagine that you're using 12 liters of oxygen per minute, but you can only consume 10. So you've got 2 liters of oxygen debt. So that amount of pyruvate would have to take the anaerobic pathway. But I can't overstress the fact that energy systems 2 and 3 start with glycolysis. We get to pyruvate, and then it is, what is the fate of pyruvate? And it comes down to oxygen availability. So now we'll look at energy system number 3 in full. Number 3, you can look at your notes and see this is called the complete oxidation of glucose. Or 6-carbon molecule. Half. Back here before the fork in the road, we burned 2 molecules of ATP, going 2 in the hole before we ever make any ATP. And then after the cutting in half, the 6 divided by 2 equals 3, we reduced a molecule of NAD, generating NADH, and we phosphorylated 2 molecules of ADP, generating 2 molecules of ATP. Now, just for the sake of completeness, I'm going to show what we did on Wednesday, which was fermentation. But what we're doing today in energy system number 3, so sticking with purple for number 3, we're converting the pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A. Acetyl is a 2-carbon molecule. So a molecule of carbon dioxide is given off. coenzyme A is added. It goes in as a substrate. It's an enzyme, just like sucrase breaks down sucrose. So coenzyme A is an enzyme. The 2-carbon component is not acetyl coenzyme A. The 2-carbon component is acetyl. So acetyl goes in, or rather, CoA goes in as a substrate. A molecule of NAD is reduced. And that completes the transition reaction. As I said last week, you might have called it the preliminary step to the Krebs cycle in any biology class you took. Now, acetyl coenzyme A feeds the Krebs cycle. So on the bottom, just something to represent the Krebs cycle, because I don't have room to draw 2 Krebs cycles, but I'll draw a Krebs cycle on the top. So coenzyme A is a coupling enzyme, meaning it connects 2 things. Like here, I can be a coupling enzyme. I'm going to connect the marker to the marker cap. Recall what you learned about enzymes in biology. They're not consumed. They participate in reactions, but they're not consumed. They do their job. They're released, and they're used over and over. 1 molecule of sucrase can split 1,000,000 molecules of sucrose, just like I can cap or uncap 1,000,000 markers. So coenzyme A is going to connect oxaloacetic acid to acetyl. Now, oxaloacetic acid is a 4-carbon molecule. So if we connect a 4-carbon molecule and a 2-carbon molecule, what do we get? Correct, we get a 6-carbon molecule. That is citric acid. And that's why the Krebs cycle is also called the citric acid cycle. Now again, coenzyme A is an enzyme. It's a coupling enzyme. So it has connected acetyl to oxaloacetic. Then coenzyme A is spit out. Unchanged, it can be used again. So what we've done, taking a different look at it, same problem I had this morning, can't get the small board to come into focus. I'm going to put this right here, write it down real quick, because then I'm going to erase it. It should be over there out of the way. So looking at this a different way, we've taken acetyl plus oxaloacetic, and that gives us citric. That's 2 carbons, 4 carbons, 6 carbons. And what did the connecting? What connected these 2? Coenzyme A. Coenzyme A was the coupler. But it's not consumed, altered, changed, used up. Now remember, we've got 2 pathways here, because we cut a 6-carbon molecule in half, generating 2 3-carbon molecules From this point, everything happens twice. The two pathways are running simultaneously. You can picture two Krebs cycles, that one turning, this one turning, or you can picture that one turning twice. It doesn't matter. When you get home and you redraw this on a huge sheet of paper, be sure and include the second Krebs cycle. There's just not room for it here. So it's called a cycle because citric acid cycles back to oxaloacetic. And everything between the 6 carbon and the 4 carbon, those are all of those intermediates that you should have had to learn in biology. You're welcome. I don't make you learn them again. What we do see is that as we go from 6 to 4, we give off 2 molecules of CO2. We reduce 3 molecules of NAD, generating 3 molecules of NADH. We reduce a molecule of FAD, generating FADH. And we directly phosphorylate 1 ADP, generating a direct ATP. Okay, so all of that happens with this other Krebs cycle. So we can sort of squish it in there. It's 2 CO2, 3 NADHs, 1 FADH, and 1 direct ATP. Now, when we were in energy system number 2, and we went through glycolysis, talking about how much ATP do we get, we lost 2 right here. We were energizing glucose, and I said this is worthless. This was worthless because energy system number 2 is the anaerobic system. We're functioning without oxygen. And you must process NADH and FADH with the electron transport system. The electron transport system requires oxygen. Oxygen is the terminal acceptor of electrons in the electron transport system. So if there's no oxygen, there's no electron transport system, so the NADH was worthless in energy system number 2. Now we're talking about aerobic metabolism. So the NADH is worth 3 ATP. Now, in general, if you're watching the video, I'm over on the left board. I'm writing 1 NADH equals 3 ATP. 1 FADH equals 2 ATP. And those are, again, in general. But that requires the electron transport system. That requires oxygen. No oxygen, no electron transport system. These values would be 0, as they were right here on Wednesday with energy system number 2. This is worth 2. So is that. The NADH we produced in the transition reaction is worth 3. Now think about that. With the transition reaction, you don't have to say, well, wait, Larry, how do I know it's worth 3? If there's no oxygen, it's not worth anything. If there's no oxygen, we wouldn't have converted the pyruvate to acetyl, would we? We would have instead converted the pyruvate to lactate. So the fact that we made acetyl means we've got oxygen and an electron transport chain running. Now, if one NADH is worth 3 ATP, how many ATP is this worth? 9. 3 times 3 is 9. We've known that since we were 3 years old. How many ATP is this worth? 2. This is 1. Got 9 right here, 2 right here, 1 right here. In a minute, we're going to add all of that up. But I first want you to recall, if you can, what does NADH stand for? In other words, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. What does NADH stand for? Oh, thing I ask you. Shall I tell you? Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Yep, fine. Excruciating pain. I'm standing as little as possible. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Spell it phonetically. Spell it phonetically if you need to. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. What vitamin? It's a B vitamin. Anybody know what B vitamin that comes from? The first word is the hint. Nicotinamide. Niacin. B vitamin niacin. But don't make the mistake of some former students and try to associate it with nicotine. It's nothing to do with nicotine. All right, so NADH, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, the B vitamin niacin. What about FADH? Flavin adenine dinucleotide. Flavin adenine dinucleotide. And what B vitamin do we need to make that? Riboflavin. So your B vitamins are energy vitamins. Sometimes when someone is feeling lethargic, do you get enough sleep? Yes. Are you eating? Yes. Get a B complex. So you go to King Soopers, wherever you might shop, and you buy a B complex. And it gives you mega doses of all of the B vitamins. Probably doesn't help you feel any better, but it turns your urine a beautiful yellow color. It's worth taking just to see the beauty. It's similar to the yellow water bottle right there. Is that prettier? It's more like the pencil case that you have. Gorgeous, bright yellow. You should really look at it if you never have. Okay, so we're going to add all of this up. And we're going to put it in a chart. You're going to need a new clean sheet of paper, but keep this where you can see it. If I just fill in the chart, it's something that you have to memorize. If you help me fill in the chart, you'll learn from it, you'll retain it, and it'll be less to memorize. This chart is an ATP accountability chart. Accountability. Imagine that you had a small business and you spent X amount of dollars on your product, which you had perhaps an employee to pay that helped you, and rent, or maybe you worked out of your home. I said a small business. And you sell whatever this product is, and you want to keep up with what's your bottom line. What did you actually net at the end of the month? You need to know what all of your expenses were, your cost. You want to know how much you sold in cash. People literally handed you cash. How much you sold via a debit card, because there's a small transaction fee associated with that. How much you sold with Visa or Visa or MasterCard. There's a bigger transaction fee associated with those. How much you sold via American Express, because there's a wicked transaction fee for the seller when a customer pays with American Express. So you want to break it out and have all these details, not just what's my bottom line, but all the details. How much money did I take in through Visa? How much did I spend on this product? How much was the light bill? This will be a chart. Give yourselves plenty of room. And we're going to use what I just erased to fill the chart out. Line sort of dropped off. Okay. Our first column, we have the reactions, glycolysis. The transition reaction. Remember, that might be called the preliminary step to the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle. Now, as you look through everything that you wrote down and I just erased to fill out this chart, you're going to be looking for a couple of different things. One's called substrate level ATP. This is where A was converted to B, and you phosphorylated ADP. So that's direct synthesis. And it could be, you might have burned ATP. Could be ATP was burned, generating ADP. So that's going to be our first column. Substrate level ATP. If you glance at your metabolic pathways that I just erased, but you've got written down in front of you, you don't see much of this. You didn't make much ATP this way. What you see a lot of is A being converted to B and NAD being reduced to NADH. That's where most of your ATP is coming from. And then you see a little bit of it where FAD is reduced to FADH. As you look through your pathways, fill out this chart. It's critical that you keep up with what happened back here before we cut the thing in half. Because after we cut it in half, there are two pathways running simultaneously. So the second half of glycolysis, there are two pathways. There are two transition reactions. There are two Krebs cycles. We don't want to learn things per glucose molecule. Because in a glucose molecule, we've got two. Well, later, it won't be today, Wednesday, we might be burning fat, and we might have 10 transition reactions and 10 Krebs cycles. So instead of learning things as the transition reactions, plural, which would be two because we started with glucose, we want to learn per transition reaction. Instead of learning what we get out of two Krebs cycles, plural, because there's always two when we start with glucose, we want to learn per Krebs cycle. So if there are 8 Krebs cycles, we know what one generates, we multiply that times 8. So keeping up with the fork in the road, what happened back here, what happened here is important. So, glycolysis, what do you see in the substrate level world, positive or negative? Look at last week's glycolysis. It's a lot more detailed than what I put up on the board today. -2? Okay, you're right. That's the very first thing. And Raquel, did that happen before or after the fork in the road?
That happened right
Before. Okay, so we've got -2. All right. What else do you see in glycolysis in the substrate level world? Look at your notes, guys. If you don't, you're just going to have to go home and memorize this mess. Look at the very end of glycolysis. What do you see in the substrate level world? Okay, so right here, you see this. 2-ADP phosphorylated into 2-ATP. So that's a total of 4, correct? But how many is it per pathway? 2. So it's 2. How many pathways are there right there? So 2 times 2 equals 4. The times 2 means there are 2 pathways running. So what's our net right here if we spent 2 and we made 4? 2. So let's put a circle around that 2 because that's a bottom line number. Now as we fill this chart out, anytime there are 2 pathways, we're going to write down what happens for one pathway, and then we're going to say times 2 to remind us that at that point there are 2 pathways running. All right, our next column is NADH. Of course, the NADH is not ATP, so our next column is ATP through NADH and the electron transport system. And then we have FADH, which is not ATP. So we need ATP through FADH and the electron transport system. So looking at glycolysis, hint, right in here. What do you see in terms of NADH? One? That's one per pathway, correct? So in other words, one right here and one right here. That's what I see too. So there's one NADH times two pathways, underlining the times two just to remind us that it means there are two pathways. So that's two. Now when we add everything together to get our total over here, we're not going to add the NADHs or the FADHs. We're only adding the ATPs. So we don't want to circle that because that's not ATP. What is one NADH worth? 3. And there are two NADHs, so that's 6. That's 6 ATP, so we circle that. As you look at glycolysis in your notes, did you make any FADH? You didn't, Mandy? Just in glycolysis? Huh? Not until the, so did you make any in glycolysis? No, right? You didn't. Okay, I didn't either. Did you make any in glycolysis? Okay, I didn't either. So those both get a 0. Now you're looking at the transition reaction. That's pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A. How many transition reactions are there? 2, but there are 2 because we started with glucose. If we started with a 20 carbon fatty acid, there'd be 10. So we don't want to memorize it in terms of glucose. We want to know it in terms of a transition reaction. So in a transition reaction, what did you get? What did you make? That's not what I made. Guys, look in your notes right here. Pyruvate to acetyl. What'd you do? You made one NADH, correct? And that's all you did in the transition reaction. Oh, I know you see CO2 being spit out, CoA coming in, but in terms of energy, all you see in terms of energy is this. So you didn't make any substrate level. You made one NADH, but there's 2 transition reactions, right? So times 2 equals 2. That's 2 NADHs. That's not ATP, so we don't circle that. Each of those NADHs is worth 3 times 2 gives us 6. Did you make any FADH in the transition reaction? I didn't either. That'd be funny if I did and you didn't, or vice versa. One of us would have a metabolic disorder. The big one, the Krebs cycle. Remember, we want to know per cycle, and then we'll double it. So did you make any substrate level ATP? How many? 1? But there are 2 cycles, right? So that's 2. And that's a number of ATP, so we'll circle that. Did you make any NADH? How many per cycle? 3 times 2 cycles, so that's 6 molecules of NADH. And what is each one of these NADHs worth? So what are the 3 NADHs worth? 9 times 2 Krebs cycles, so that's 18. That's an ATP number, so we circle that. Did you make any FADH in the Krebs cycle? How many? 1 total or 1 per cycle? Times 2 cycles equals 2, and what's that 1 worth? 2 times 2 cycles, that's 4. Circle that because that's 4 ATP. Now, if we add up all the rows and then all the columns, we ought to get the same number, unless something's screwy. So in this row, we have 2 and 6, that's 8, and that's ATP. We're not adding the NADHs. In this row, we have 6, that's all we have. And in the bottom row, we've got 2 and 18, that's 20, plus 4. So we can see immediately that most of the ATP from a glucose molecule comes through the Krebs cycle. Another thing we can see is that most of the ATP from a molecule of glucose not only comes from the Krebs cycle, but comes from NADH produced in the Krebs cycle. Now, if we add that up, 24 and 6, that's 30, plus 8, that's 38. So now if we do it the other way, we ought to get 38 again. If not, something's screwed up. So in this column, I've got 2 and 2, that's 4. Don't care about this column, that's not ATP. In this column, I've got 6 and 6, that's 12. 12 and 18, that's 30. Don't care about this column, that's not ATP. In this column, I've got 4. 30 and 4 and 4, that's 38. That's the maximum yield from a molecule of glucose. So you have the muscle chart printed on the back side of your left eyebrow. You might want to print this on the back side of your right eyebrow, not eyebrow, eyelid. Print it on your eyebrow, that'd be tough. All those little hairs. So how many ATP do you get through FADH and 1 turn of the Krebs cycle? 2. Through FADH and 1 turn of the Krebs cycle. So here's Krebs, so we know we're somewhere in there. Through FADH and 1 turn of the Krebs cycle. It says 4, but that was for 2 cycles. So the people that said you get 2, that's correct. Same question, but different. How many ATP do you get through FADH and the Krebs cycles from the complete oxidation of glucose? 4. The answer changed because when you say the complete oxidation of glucose, there's 2 Krebs cycles. Knowing all of this will make fat burning simple, which we won't be doing today. That's energy system number 4, but we will be doing that on Wednesday. The next thing we're going to talk about today is next page of the notes, red versus white muscle fibers. And before that, we're going to pause and talk about me. me sit down and rest. Okay, so guys, I'm not well. I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. The pain has become excruciating. It doesn't go away when I sit down. When it started, when I sat, the pain went away. And just to be clear, I mean, I assume I talked about it and everybody listens to me, and so you all know. But in case you don't, so there's my femur. You see the head of the femur. My head doesn't look like that. Collapsed. Looks like that. I get a new hip. The surgery was scheduled for May 16th. I know I told you that previously. There's a little calendar. I don't know if you can see it or not. Can't open the calendar in your phone. I saw the second surgeon Friday. It was not because I didn't like the first surgeon, but a friend of mine who's a surgeon, and they're all in the same practice. He wanted me to consult with this second guy because the second guy does an anterior approach. First guy and most surgeons do a posterior approach. That's where they make an incision through the butt, the gluteus maximus, and they just spread it apart and then go in and do the work. With the anterior approach, no muscles are cut. You heal faster. There's less chance of dislocation. My surgeon has done over 3,000 of these. He's had 3 patients experience dislocation, and 2 of the 3 were doing something that they knew they should not be doing. So he's had 1 in 3,000 that dislocated. The anterior approach and the minimizing the risk of dislocation is critical in active people. It's very different when you're trying to fix an elderly man or woman who is tired of living in a wheelchair. They wanted to be able to move around the house and not need in-home care. That's one thing, but when you're trying to restore somebody's ability to ski and climb, it's very, very different. So anyway, I'm going with this second surgeon, and one of the beauties of it is, again, there's a calendar. So there's May 16th. That's when it was scheduled for. It's now scheduled for May 2nd. So the surgery is 2 weeks earlier. So it's like 2.5 weeks away is the surgery. Now, let's look at the schedule. So this is the lab schedule. Half of you have your muscle practical on April 29th. That's Monday. The other half of you have your muscle practical, where's the 29th? There it is. Have your muscle practical on the 1st. That's 5. That's the day before surgery. Where we run into a problem is when we look at the lecture schedule. The problem with the lecture schedule is because we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day, meaning we started the semester on a Tuesday and not a Monday. Therefore, the semester ends on a Monday. So your final exam is scheduled for May 6th, which is, of course, after the day of my surgery. So somebody's going to come in and administer your final to you on May 6th. This means that you won't get your grades out in the hall outside the lab like you're used to doing. They will run your scantrons. They won't show them to you. They don't even know you. be the janitor for all I know that administers the final. Somebody will run the Scantrons through the computer and they will deliver them to my house. Then hopefully by so surgery's on the 2nd. So hopefully by the 8th, that's about a week, I'll be down off the drugs and coherent enough to do your final grade stuff and get your final grades input. This means you won't know your final grade on the 6th like you would if I was here. You won't know until the 8th or the 9th. So anyway, there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, like I say, I don't know how long I'm going to make it. I might not be here Wednesday. You might come in Wednesday to somebody that's showing you a WebEx recording from last fall, because it's just ungodly. Like I said, I no longer get relief when I sit. Last night I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I laid there from 2 until 4:30-ish. Right side, left side, back, right side, left side, back, trying to find a position that was pain-free. I couldn't. I was maxed out on all my meds. There was nothing I could take unless I wanted to kill myself. And finally, I think it was about 4:30, I did doze off, and then guess what happened at 5? My alarm went off. I could have just thrown it through the window. And I just in agony. So I'm tired of saying that. You're tired of hearing that, but I'm just being upfront with you. For all we know, I won't be back. This may be my last day. It is what it is. Thank God I've got 2,562 hours of sick leave, so I can be off for the next year or so if I want to. Yeah. How many weeks does that work out to?
Here, take it home.
2,562 hours of sick leave. All right, so you know everything I know. Okay, so we're going to move to the red, the white, and I know we still have a fat metabolism, but we're gonna do the red, the white first. Yes.
So if the head of your femur is like half cut off, you're not gonna get a new femur?
Oh, I am. I'm having a total
You're gonna get a new femur and a new hip.
hip. So they're going to cut off the proximal part of my femur and replace it with an artificial stem and head and a new acetabulum. Well, the acetabulum they smooth out and they put a metal implant in it, and then they line the metal implant with a plastic implant.
This is not metal on metal. That's what I want.
Yeah, it's not metal on metal. It's like plastic on plastic.
I have real problems with ones that are metal on metal.
It's terrible.
Yes.
Yes.
So why would surgeons opt to use the posterior method?
Because it's easier.
Cheaper for them?
I don't know about cheaper for them. But if you look at the cadaver, like when you're upstairs in the lab, look at that space where right up here, where you have the tensor fascia, you have the vastus lateralis, you have the rectus femoris, and using retractors, they pull those apart, and they have an itty bitty space that they have to work in. It's much more difficult to visualize what they're doing. A lot of it's done by feel. There's also a nerve right there called the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. If they cut it accidentally, you lose sensation in your thigh. So it's riskier, you could say, requires much more skill. It's not new. The procedure was pioneered back in the 50s, I believe, by somebody in Japan. Yeah, the anterior, but it's just never been picked up on because of the difficulty. Versus with the posterior, you make a big old cut through the gluteus maximus, you separate it, and you got this ginormous window to see through, which then the gluteus maximus has to heal. Also, with the posterior approach, you cut a lot of muscles, other muscles.
Early people opt for that option because.
Well, first of all, you have to be thin to do the anterior approach. A lot of elderly people that are wheelchair bound are not thin. But also with the elderly people, you're probably not trying to restore their ability to climb 14ers and snow ski. Probably just trying to restore their ability to ambulate around their house so they don't need in-home care.
Are you trying to snow?
Huh? I'll be able to do everything. Yeah. I'll just have one more bionic part,
How many bionic parts do you have now?
just one, L3, L4 fusion. But yeah, I'll be hoping my other hip blows out in the next. No, I won't be hoping my other hip blows out.
Never. Right.
Yeah, I see two hands. Somebody go ahead.
Just get them both done.
We can do that today in lab or Wednesday, whatever day you have left.
It sounds like you're not.
There's no way to see exam 3. Nobody ever has. There's not enough time between exam 3 and the final. But we bring up exam 2 in lab this week so that it happens. Because I will get to the lab all of a sudden, cadaver will be out, and I'll forget all about it.
Right.
Yeah, Kyle, we'll do it in lab today and Wednesday.
Well, you said you might
Well, okay, then come today.
not.
I'll be here Wednesday. I was just trying to make my point. That I'm in agony. Don't have to be here. I can take the next, year and a half. What's 2,562 divided by 40?
Thousand.
2,562 divided by 40.
64.5.
So I can take 64.5 weeks off.
Oh my gosh.
And there's only 30 weeks in a semester, in an academic year. I could take 2 years off. I could just be out sick for 2 years.
Putting in the work, right?
I know.
Contact us.
All right.
Patient, it's died. Hated after that. I'm like, oh, you're still getting paid.
Okay, so the red, the white thing. So previously I related this to chicken and turkey. The dark meat is the red, the white meat, the red muscle fibers are the dark meat. The white muscle fibers are the white meat in the chicken or the turkey. As I said when I alluded to this earlier, I'm not going to be telling you, well, your arms are dark meat and your legs are white meat or anything like that. All of our muscles are a mixture of the dark and the white. So let's make a chart. So we can call these type 1 and type 2. Or we can call them red and white. Or we can call them aerobic and anaerobic. These are muscle fibers. All three names mean something. So when we call them red and white, we'll start with that. The red is dark, the white is white. Aerobic, anaerobic, the red fibers use energy system number 3 primarily, the aerobic system. The white fibers use energy system number 2, the glycogen lactate system. The type 1, type 2 part has to do with which fibers do you use first? Fibers, motor units. So mentally, you need to go back to this. You can flip back in your notes and see it if you want to. We were talking about characteristics. Irritability, contractility, elasticity, extensibility. I said a motor nerve innervates a muscle. It zaps the muscle and the muscle contracts. I said that's on or off, yes, no, binary. We have to be able to control the strength, the force, the speed. So and again, you can flip back in your notes to see all of this. We divided the muscle into many muscle fibers or muscle cells. We divided the nerve into many nerve cells or neurons. I said a single neuron innervates a small group of muscle fibers, and that's called a motor unit. As I need more strength, more force, more speed, I recruit more motor units. So I might need enough motor units to curl a paperclip versus curl a telephone versus curl a chair. Or I might need enough motor units to walk versus recruit more motor units and run. Recruit more motor units and run faster. So the type 1, type 2 is saying I use all of my aerobic fibers before I tap into my anaerobic capacity. And that just makes sense. In other words, walking is aerobic. As you would pick up the pace, and you pick up the pace, you pick up the pace, faster, 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 until you're sprinting as hard and fast as you can, you go anaerobic. But you start out aerobic. When you're walking, you're not. And then as you increase the pace and you're sprinting, you're breathing so easily and you're talking. And, that's backwards. So each name has a meaning, a basis for that name. Everything about these red fibers has to do with the fact that they're made to use oxygen. So first of all, they have more iron. If we go back to the chicken, that's what causes the dark color and the characteristic taste. So you may love the breast and the drumstick and the thigh. You may not like the drumstick and the thigh. It has that characteristic flavor. It's because of the iron. What does iron go with? Iron goes with hemoglobin. What does hemoglobin go with? Red blood cells. So the red fibers are highly vascular. Because the red blood cells using the iron and the hemoglobin do what? Transport oxygen. The white fibers are less vascular. Again, everything about the red goes with oxygen utilization. The red fibers have more myoglobin. Myoglobin is that protein that stores oxygen in muscle tissue. What organelle uses the oxygen in any cell? Ribosomes, Golgi, nucleus, what? You guys, come on. A third grade question. The mitochondria, right? So we have more mitochondria here. We don't have as many mitochondria over here. In energy system number 2, the glycogen lactate system, the anaerobic system, what are we burning? Glucose. That's it. You can't burn fat anaerobically. So the white fibers have more glycogen. and subsequently more glucose. They don't have a lot of fat. The red fibers have more intramuscular fat. Relate this to the kitchen. Does anybody cook? So if you take a boneless, skinless chicken breast, it's almost pure protein. There's virtually no fat in it. But now you take a chicken thigh, fatty. And some people prefer one versus the other. I want the boneless, skinless chicken breast because it's fat-free and I'm watching my fat intake. I want the chicken thigh because it tastes better because of the fat. You know, so you're making whatever you're making. I don't care. Fajitas, curry chicken, chicken teriyaki. Different people are going to use. What's wrong with you don't like any of the food I just named? What? Anyway, different people are going to choose, you know, different part of the chicken to make whatever chicken dish they might make. I want baked chicken and rice tonight. Okay, what you want? The good stuff, it's fatty, those would be thighs. You want the good stuff, it's fat-free, those would be breast. Stuff that I've already written down, I know that. Okay, the red fibers, they split ATP slowly and resist fatigue. The white fibers split ATP quickly and fatigue easily. Fatigue slowly, fatigue easily. Jogging versus sprinting. When are you going to fatigue faster? Walking with your friend or your dog? Or jogging a pace of 12-minute miles? Or on the track, running as fast as you possibly can? Trying to run, 6-minute miles, 5-minute miles. You're going to fatigue really fast when you're sprinting. These are the fibers that you use for sprinting. These are the fibers that you use for endurance. LSD, and no, that's not the drug. Long, steady distance or long, slow distance. If you're moving slowly, whether that means you're jogging or you're walking, you can keep moving for hours. I mean, people go out and hike, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, and then get up the next day and do it again. But you can't sprint 6 or 7 hours. You're lucky if you can sprint 30 seconds. These are the fibers that the Olympic athletes doing on the track, 200 meters, 400 meters. And of course, distance is relative. There's one Olympic athlete, he races 100, he's probably dead by now, but he races 100, 200, and 400 meters. He's never run more than a mile in his entire life. He has no reason to. All his training consists of is going to the track and running so hard he throws up, basically. And then you have so he considers a mile a long distance. Then you have other people that would never run less than 5 miles. They consider long distance 10, 15, 20. Then you have the people that do the ultras we've talked about. They consider a marathon 26.2 speed work because they're training to race 100. So time, distance, speed, it's all very, very relative. I'll never run a 6-minute mile in my life, but I can run for hours. Well, I can't run at all right now. There's some American professional athlete, he's probably dead too by now, but He won Boston a few times, but on his rest days, he ran 6 minute miles. His rest days, that's what he did. This is somebody who thinks fast is getting down below 4.5 minutes a mile. And so again, we all have a mixture of both fibers and all of our muscles, but your natural born sprinter, whether it be swimming, biking, running, your natural born sprinter has more of the white than your natural born endurance runner who has more of the red. Be able to taste the difference if you were starving and had to eat one of them. All right. So we're going to pick up with Roman numeral 7. But actually, before we do, we are going to pick up with Roman numeral 7. But right before we do that, we're going to address burning fat, because I got into that right here. The chicken thigh, drumstick, the red muscle fibers, fatty. They store lots of intramuscular fat. They burn that fat, though, versus the lean white meat, breast and wing. So we'll learn how to do energy system number 4, beta oxidation, burn some fat, and then we'll take that to exercise and continuing to relate it to aerobic and anaerobic and the fate of pyruvate. Do we make acetyl or do we make lactate? Okay, so it looks like you get out 4 minutes. I think it's early today. Huh?
Do you need help releasing the board? I can do it.
Want to do it, bless you. I said this in lab, but it seemed like a lot of people were gone. So last week I forgot to do the binder check, or it was going to be show me either your binder or your personal study guide or different ways you came up with for naming muscle. And on Monday, when I realized, or somebody pointed it out, who brought it up, and I realized I hadn't done it. So anyway, I'm just going to add 10 points to everybody's exam one.